as you may know, because we've been talking about it at length over the last year on this show, Hamilton debuted on Broadway 10 years ago. And as a matter of fact, it debuted on Disney Plus 5 years ago this week.
Yeah. Big timeline things there for it.
Big anniversaries.
That's it. That's
big
the word
anniversaries. We just had our anniversary, our 7th anniversary, bigger anniversary for Hamilton. Well, we thought we'd have a little fun being 4th of July weekend. 4th of July weekend can be fun. It should be fun. And we thought we'd have a little fun celebrating both the 4th of July weekend with some Hamilton.
That's patriotic themed play.
Yes. And adding a little Disney flair because that's what we do here on this show. Right, Michelle?
Yeah, we're crazy like that.
So we thought this week we'd bring you the Hamilton Recast.
The big recast.
The Disney Character Edition. So we're going to be recasting some of the major roles that we're not doing every character, but some of the major roles that are within Hamilton and using Disney characters to put them in, right?
That's right. And it's going to be fun.
I don't know if you stuck. Did you stick to animated characters?
No.
No. Okay.
I'm all over the Disney universe.
Okay. So I don't think there were any rules to this. We were just going to go through and give care. We were just going to go through and give characters that we like. So yeah, I mean, I think almost all of mine are animated, but we'll see it. It's all
most
good.
Of mine
it's
are.
all good. And by the way, we'd love your lists. We'll go over it again at the end of this, but please share your list with us as well. So let's go ahead and start getting to it. The Hamilton Recast, the big recast. That's right. We're going to have it. The big recast of Hamilton. Lots of different characters. Where are we starting here, Michelle?
Well, before we actually start with a character, I wanted to say, surprisingly, when I was doing my research for this, I found the description of each character written by Lin-Manuel himself for the auditions for casting the Broadway run.
Oh.
So I have some little behind the scenes of how he kind of described each of these characters for people.
Michelle's already coming out with this week's hashtag Year of Lin. I get to relax and not do anything the rest of the week because Michelle's got our hashtag Year of Lin. Lin, are you hearing that? By the way, we still want to get you on the show, at least acknowledge this show. If not, come on for a full-on interview. We'd love to know what Disney characters you would recast in these roles. But wow, Michelle hitting us up with the hashtag Year of Lin. I love it.
All right.
It's so awesome. So let's go ahead.
All right. So I think, are we starting off with Peggy?
Looks like we're starting off with Peggy. That's what the slide says. The slide says, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, we're starting off with and Peggy.
Yeah.
Schuyler, the Schuyler sisters.
Right. So I don't know how you approach this. When I did, I tried to, and this was before I found Lynn's information, tried to capture what are their essence. What are some of the things about them? With Peggy, you don't get to know her a lot, other than knowing obviously she's a sister of the other two Schuyler sisters. But, she seemed somewhat fearful to me, insecure on her own right, and so, but not that she isn't really strong, but just that's her image of herself. What Lynn said was, and I'm going to quote, sweet, shy, youngest of the three Schuyler sisters. He didn't have a lot to say about this one, I'll admit. And so this one, I really gave it some thought, and I figured the best recast for this one would be Cruz Ramirez from Cars 3. She was insecure. She had the knowledge of how to be a racer, but she didn't see herself as that. And so I thought, you know what, that kind of is the same personality that you see in Peggy. She doesn't see her own self worth or skill sets, and yet they're there. So
I like it. That's a great choice. A fascinating choice. Fantastic choice. We just watched Cars 3 the other day because Scott's with us and he wanted to do the whole entire Cars. You had a Cars binge watch. I only caught the tail end of Cars 3, but it was good to see Cruz Ramirez again. I like her character.
I kind of forgot about her, and the more you watch any of the the films, you get more out of it, and I got a little bit more out of watching it this time.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
So
Really cool. Nice choice. Nice choice.
Thank you. So what about you?
As for me, so I started going one way with the entire Schuyler Sisters group, and then changed what I wanted to do later on the more I thought about it. Originally, I was going to go with princesses for all the different Schuyler sisters, and I thought, and this is where I'm going to go with this is not who I chose, but I was thinking kind of Alice from Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of as that, a little bit naive, a little bit, in wonder of everything around her. And I think that is a good way to go as well.
Yeah.
But the more I thought about it, I kind of thought about the Schuyler sisters together. I kind of thought about 3 classic characters together. And the one that's kind of that, that extra wheel, kind of there, popular, fantastic, love her, but maybe she's not quite on the level of her other sisters or other friends.
Okay.
So I went with Clarabelle Cow as my Peggy Schuyler. She's definitely a bit stylish, as Peggy is, but maybe a background player to her sisters. She's also a little bit snooty, which I could see, Peggy's young and she's got a wealthy father, and I can see her being a little snooty and a little bit of a gossip. It wouldn't surprise me if Peggy's a little bit of a gossip. So I can see Clarabelle Cow kind of fitting into that role there, and it'll make even more sense when you hear the rest of my Schuyler sisters.
Nice.
Well. So that's where I went, but I think Alice would have been a fun choice.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the idea of how you were approaching it with the concept too of princesses and things. I think all of those could work really nicely.
Absolutely. So let's go on to our next one, and that is moving on to Eliza Schuyler / Hamilton. Yes, the sweet one,
right?
In many regards. Yeah.
Right.
So who do you have for Eliza, Michelle?
Okay, again, going with her personality. When I'm watching the play, I feel she's somebody who's very passionate, and she does want to go after what she wants. She may be a little timid about it, but she's not fearful. Loving and definitely family focused. Now, what Lynn said about her, and I'm again quoting Lynn: fiercely loyal, self-possessed, proud, evolves from lovesick, wealthy young woman to the sole keeper of her late husband's legacy. And this one, I think this one kind of was the biggest challenge to me because, how do you capture all of that? And this one, I had some other thoughts to it, but I ended up landing on Jane from Tarzan, because I feel like she's very family focused. I mean, she was doing things, this exploration with her father. She's not afraid to, approach a person who's totally different, like Tarzan, and you would see that with Hamilton. And so I just kind of thought she kind of embodies that.
Yeah, I like that. That's an interesting choice. Again, Michelle with the best list. Michelle is much more interesting. Her list is going to be much more interesting than my list. I guarantee you 100%, top to bottom, her list is going to be much more interesting. I like it. I like Jane. I didn't really think of Jane, but Jane totally makes sense.
Well, thank you. Good. And now I'm really curious of yours, starting with Clarabelle.
I did not put Mirabelle in there. No.
Clarabelle. So I'm looking to see who the next Schuyler sister recast is.
Mirabelle might have been not a bad Eliza now that I think about it a little bit, but I don't know. No. So again, I'm going to go with both ways I thought about this. Originally, I was going princesses for the Schuyler sisters. Originally, I had Belle in this spot because I thought, she can be a little reserved, especially when she's around the townsfolk or whatever, but she's also, when need be, she can get her point across, and she's fiery and she's smart. And just like Eliza, I kind of felt that.
Sure.
But then I transitioned, thought differently about it. And I like Lynn. Well, I like everything Lynn does. But I like Lynn's take on Eliza. And I kind of thought around the same process. She's sweet, but gets her voice, maybe comes from kind of a little lovesick to begin with. It develops into a very, very strong female presence. And I really feel that calls out to Minnie Mouse.
Nice.
I think Minnie is the perfect Eliza.
Yeah.
She totally makes sense. Always stylish, sweet, not afraid to speak her mind. He maybe started out as she started out kind of with the character, was a little kind of a lovesick character, but then has definitely gained her own voice and stepped out of that role and is amazing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I think that. Minnie as Eliza makes total sense.
I really think that you nailed it there.
Thanks.
Cool.
And now let's move on to our next one. Who do we got next? We must be finishing out the Schuyler sisters, right? Yep. We're going with Angelica next. Angelica Schuyler next. Michelle, who do you have for Angelica Schuyler?
Okay. Again, my thought was somebody who is smart, bold, and confident. She takes family and her responsibility in what her position is in the family very seriously. It is a driver for her actions. The way that Lynn described, quoting Lynn, is fierce, dazzling, brilliant, can read a room and everyone in it instantly. Close quote. This one, I actually have two here. I gotta narrow it down to one, I guess, huh? I think what I'll go with is I'm gonna go out on the limb here is Barley Lightfoot from Onward.
Interesting.
I mean, he is definitely bold out there. He's very comfortable in his skin to be very bold. And he actually is smart, even though you don't think that, it doesn't come across. He comes across kind of like a goof, but he really isn't. And definitely his role in the family is something that he is very in tune to, or just is that way naturally, and becoming kind of like the surrogate father in that. So I kind of felt like Barley Lightfoot is definitely somebody who could play the Angelica role.
I like that. That's a very interesting choice there, especially going a little gender bending there, a little bit something different. But I like your thought process. That's pretty cool. So yeah, interesting. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah.
So I have a feeling I know who your Angelica is based on what your trend has been here in the three.
I think I pretty much gave it away.
Yeah.
Again, originally princesses. Originally totally made sense to me. Somebody that played Angelica Schuyler, again, smart, knows what she wants, gonna go out and get it, not afraid to speak her mind, stand toe to toe with even men for sure.
Right.
I was gonna go with Tiana. Tiana totally makes sense for that role, and I could totally see her that. But then when I decided to pivot to go to classic characters, well, I think you've already figured it out. If Minnie Mouse is my Eliza, if Clarabelle Cow is my Peggy, then Angelica has to be, of course, Daisy Duck. And of course, definitely stylish 100%. We'll stand it toe to toe, even with Donald. We'll go she will stand. It's got to be tough to stand toe to toe with Donald all the time, and put up with it. Can get frustrated with people. I can see Angelica get totally frustrated with people, as Daisy would.
Right.
But in the end, still be very sweet and very smart. And I think that Daisy Duck is a really good Angelica Schuyler in my book.
100%. I totally agree with you. That is, and I love that approach that you took with those three. That was really cool.
Thanks. But let's get back to the real list. Let's get back to who we got next. Where are we going next? Well, it must be Lafayette.
Yeah, Lafayette, and I wasn't sure. We didn't talk about this in detail, if we're to do each one individually or cover the two of them as one, as they did in the play.
Yeah, I think it's up to you and how you did it. I'll tell you, I did two different, because I didn't decide on somebody that I thought fit two roles. So I did two different characters for those roles. So I'm interested to hear how you did it as well.
All right. Well, thank you. I actually did it as one. But I felt like this person could play both roles as well as what we saw on stage. Again, I saw, if you kind of combined what both of those characters brought to the performance, they were a bit cocky and larger than life, willing to break some rules for what they perceive is for the better good, right? The greater good, or at least for the greater good of themselves. Now, sharing again Lynn's description, what he said about Lafayette is an earnest, idealistic Frenchman who reveals himself to be a superior military commander. And Jefferson is relaxed, jazzy, brilliant, whose effortless cool is ruffled only by Hamilton. And the Disney character that I thought could play both of those roles actually is Mr. Incredible. I feel he's cocky. He believes he can do it all, can do anything. Definitely larger than life. He likes to be
He's
out
definitely
there.
larger than life. There's no question about that.
He was even willing to wear a cape and to break some rules if he thought, like whether it was crime fighting to help other people or crime fighting to help build his ego or whatever. I felt like that kind of fit that character.
Yeah, fascinating. That's an interesting choice. Michelle's list was definitely the best.
I don't know.
Most interesting list for sure. I love it. I love it. So you have him for both
roles. Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
So,
I don't know if he has that flame. I can't see him dancing around singing "What Did I Miss?" But all good.
I actually can see
You can
it.
see that.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think it would be hilarious.
I want to see the picture show in Michelle's head.
And that's when he would be wearing a cape or something.
That is something I need to see. I need to see that happen now. That's fascinating. So,
Although now that we're sitting here talking, I can think of another character who would specifically be Jefferson.
let's see if it matches up with who I think is
All
Jefferson.
right, let's hear yours first.
Because I do have two different characters for this
Okay.
role, although I think at least one of them could have probably played both roles. For Lafayette, I kind of feel he's a bit of a swashbuckler, he's a bit of a rogue. He's very French, very formal, but he's also, he's willing to do his own thing as need be. And I feel like the character that fits his role perfectly is Eugene Fitzherbert, aka Flynn Rider. I can see him definitely jumping off a table.
That's true.
Definitely taking on the redcoats for
Yes.
sure. I could see Flynn Rider, especially if he's protecting Rapunzel,
Right.
get in there and do that battle. I think he fits that role really, really well. I could see him possibly playing Thomas Jefferson as well. There's a little bit of a villainous side to him in some ways. Again, he's a bit of a rogue. He is a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. And I could definitely see him dancing around to What Did I Miss?
Yeah.
But I think more importantly, since Jefferson is kind of a villain in Hamilton in many ways, I think you kind of need a villain to play that role a little bit. A flamboyant villain.
Okay.
Maybe a pirate villain. How about Captain Hook? Now, Captain Hook almost is already wearing that coat that he's wearing in What Did I Miss through most of the second act there. But he's, Captain Hook, flamboyant, devious, just like Jefferson is in Hamilton.
Yes.
I could see him definitely taking on that role and playing it really, really well. And he'd be
He would be
Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, totally. I could totally see it. Yeah, you're 100% right. So very good.
What do we got next? So those are our Lafayettes. What do we have next?
Okay. Well, for Jefferson, the one that, as we were talking, it came to my mind from Star Wars is Lando Calrissian. I could definitely.
Lando would be great.
Wouldn't he be great?
Lando would be
that
great.
just came to my mind now.
Lando would be fantastic.
Too funny.
Like Lando. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right. So next we're going to go with
Washington.
Washington.
Yes, you said it right. Okay. My perception of him, he's a leader that others respect, a mentor. He realizes his past mistakes and he wants people to learn from them, not to make them as well. And he's willing to sacrifice to make things better for others. I loved Lin-Manuel's description. Quote, authoritative, regal, aloof, aware of his place in history at all times, John Legend meets Mufasa. I have to say, in his descriptions, he always did have like song, performers, singers, rappers, and things like that. But that one I felt, because he actually included Mufasa, kind of fit this one too. For me, I had Steve Rogers.
Captain America himself.
Captain America.
Yeah,
yes.
That makes sense.
I kind of felt like, and especially looking at Lynn's perspective, knowing he's aware of his place in history, of what he brings to the table. But I also think he's somebody that people respect, et cetera, and willing to go in the battle for others. So
Very much
Anyways.
willing to stand up and be a leader, but also, pass along knowledge.
Right.
And yeah, very good. I like that. I like that. And very appropriate for 4th of July
Yeah.
weekend to have Captain America involved for
Yeah.
sure.
So what do you have?
Very interesting that you read that because I had not seen that quote, that breakdown of the
Right.
characters from Hamilton. And I think now you know where I'm going with
Oh my gosh.
my George Washington. Yes, it's definitely Mufasa.
Wow.
That is the first character that came to my mind when you're thinking about George Washington. Yes, he's a king, and I know the U.S. Revolution is not about kings. We're not about kings here in this country, theoretically. We're not about kings here in this country, but I believe more than anything else, he is a leader.
Right.
He is someone who can take control, just like George Washington, but also act not only as, well, obviously acts as a father, but a father figure to others and pass along fatherly like advice, just like George Washington did in Hamilton. I kind of feel like Mufasa just speaks to a very regal,
right.
He's a king in Lion King, obviously. No kings, he's a president. Yeah, but I kind of feel he fits that role. I also wanted to mention, I did think about for a moment changing it up a little bit and doing something a little bit different. I thought another that could fit this role that would be really, really interesting is Mulan. I kind of feel Mulan is, once she figures herself out, is a bit regal, is a heck of a leader. I mean, yes, technically she's not the leader of, that army, but she takes on that role and becomes the leader. I feel like she kind of could be that leader in many regards. So I kind of thought that was interesting. But when I thought more of Mufasa, I'm like, that is George Washington.
Yes.
I find it fascinating that Lin-Manuel Miranda thought that exact same way.
Right. You're right on the same wavelength with him. Wow. Impressive.
You and me, Lynn. That's why you got to come on for an interview. You got to come on with us. Speaking of kings, who do we got next, Michelle?
We have the king.
He'll be back. Yes, the king. The king is always fun. People love it. The king is on for like 7 minutes of the entire thing of Hamilton, and he's one of the favorite characters of all of them in the show. Michelle, I'm interested to hear who you have as the king of your recast of Hamilton.
Okay, so to me, another over-the-top big personality, obviously. He knows he has power, and he does what he wants, right? It doesn't matter what others feel like. He does what he wants. What Lynn said is he's entitled. He sees the American colonies as deluded former lover who will come crawling back. And okay, I guess I have to make a decision. I have 2 names here, and I think both of them would fit, but I think I will go with Loki.
Loki's good. I like Loki. That's a good one.
Yeah, I just feel like, Loki's, kind of like the same personality, right? He's going to come across, he's going to be big, make speeches and, warn people of how they need to
be a little bit vindictive. Look for a little revenge, also be a little pouty when things don't go right. Yes.
So, anyways, so that's my king recast.
Who's your other one? I'm curious.
Maui.
Maui. I could see Maui being that way. Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Especially in Moana. And Moana 2 is not a little bit different, but in Moana, the first one, he kind of had that to begin with for sure. And he evolved as a character. But definitely can see that.
Well, thank you. All right. So who do you have playing the king?
Mine, I actually have a character who kind of takes on the role as king, even though he's not the king. He was the brother of a king, and his brother went away. So he stepped into that role and acted very much like this king we see in Hamilton. It's Prince John from Robin Hood.
Oh, wow.
Prince John from Robin Hood, who steps into that role when his brother King Richard goes away to fight, I believe it's the Crusades, but whatever war that is to fight. And he steps in and pretends to be the king, even though he's, the forgotten brother, the pouty brother, the crybaby brother. He's a bit of a coward. You can talk about the king being that behind his people, making them do the things for him.
Right.
Bit of a crybaby, as I already mentioned. Definitely does not have the best interest of his people involved in his thought process or his country. And he opts to rule through fear more than through love or, respect or
Right.
anything else.
Wow.
Kind of just talks to what the king is in Hamilton as well. Prince John from Robin Hood, I feel, would be the perfect king. And he's kind of funny being a crybaby, which I kind of feel is the way the king is in Hamilton as well.
Yeah. Oh man, I like that. I really love that. I didn't even go that direction whatsoever. I thought that's really cool.
Yeah,
thanks.
I
like it.
So that's our kings as we do our Hamilton recast.
Yeah.
With Disney characters. Now we got to get to the top two, the main two. That's right. We'll start off with Aaron Burr, sir. Yes, Aaron Burr. I'd love to hear who Michelle has as Aaron Burr here. I know it's going to be fantastic and fascinating, while mine will be boring.
I doubt
not very interesting at all. You probably have already predicted it. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you didn't. We'll see.
I have.
I know you will not predict Michelle because I have no idea. I have no idea. Michelle, who do you have playing Aaron Burr in our Hamilton recast?
Okay, so this one, I figured because he's thoughtful in decision making, feels hard work and putting in the time will be rewarded. But he does start to become power hungry. And what Lynn says is a cool, steely, reserved, an orphan raised in wealth, plays his cards and opinions close to the vest, slow to anger, but when he gets there, look out. I feel like the person who could play Burr is Count Dooku. He starts off kind of as a good person. He's a Jedi, but eventually he gets power hungry and moves to kind of the dark side there. And I just could see him. You can
see him playing that.
Burr. Yeah,
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a good choice. It's definitely a good choice.
It's different.
It's definitely a more interesting choice than my choice, I think. Although I don't know. You may think my choice is very interesting. Because, look, you're going to know who I went with Hamilton here when I mentioned Burr. By the way, you're going to know. It's going to give it away for sure. Now, I found Hamilton and Burr really hard for me to cast because they kind of have to be friends, but also be able to be adversaries at the same time. And it makes it very difficult. And they're also very interesting roles because they both are heroes and villains. I mean, a little bit. I mean, even Hamilton, even though it's his name is on it and you're rooting for Hamilton, he does some very sketchy things throughout it all. So it's kind of tough to get those spots going. And I thought about going one way with this at first, and then I decided to flip it because I thought it made more sense when I thought about who these characters were and how they act on the stage, on the screen. So my Aaron Burr may surprise you to think that it is actually Mickey Mouse.
Ooh.
Mickey Mouse is my Aaron Burr because when I thought about the characters, Aaron Burr, his whole thing is, keeping it close to the vest. Wait for it. Not go out, not branch out, not be too, spontaneous, not be just do things on a whim. Think about the process and decide to do things until he makes the poor choice or just the
devastating.
The terrible choice to not wait for it and go after this. So I kind of thought that in some regards was Mickey Mouse. I mean, he's relatively likable. Well, he is likable. Mickey Mouse, we love Mickey Mouse. I can't say he's relatively likable. Lovable. He's lovable. We love Mickey Mouse. Just Burr, you like him at the beginning. You enjoy him. You appreciate him. You understand. You can relate to him. At least some of us can relate. I can very much relate to Aaron Burr. I love Mickey Mouse. He's kind of an everyman. He was brought up in maybe a little bit better area. I mean, Mickey Mouse, everybody loved Mickey Mouse. He's the first cartoon character, obviously Oswald, but the first real where Disney really took off character. And so he's loved. He's been put on a pedestal, kind of like Burr was kind of put on a pedestal. You can see him thinking things out. Mickey always thought things out as he go through. But as we've seen in the Mickey shorts, sometimes things can go awry and he can snap a little bit. Mickey can snap a little bit. They tried to stay away from that for a long time, but we've seen him snap. And I think that's kind of a little bit what Burr does.
Right.
And Mickey could do. So that's kind of why I put him in as my Aaron Burr. And I think you're going to figure out who my Alexander Hamilton is by that, but we'll go to that in a moment. Let's go back to the real list first and get to Michelle's Alexander Hamilton.
All right. Well, I think I might know who your Hamilton is, but I can't say I'm positive I know. I see Hamilton as somebody who's confident, but doesn't always stick to following the conventional ways. He's willing to take chances. He feels his ideas are great, and he knows not everybody's going to follow or believe him, but he's going to do what he can to try to get them to be persuaded and follow along. And he creates havoc despite his good intentions, right? What Lynn said is, an earnest, ambitious hothead, a man possessed, speaks his mind no matter the cost. And I don't know that I went quite as hard as that, but I felt Jack from The Nightmare Before Christmas, Jack Skellington. He's confident in his role, but he's seeing, some other opportunities and wanting to go that way. He's meeting with the town people and trying to convince them to change holidays or change how the holiday is celebrated, etc. And despite him having good intentions to make this something fun for everybody, we know how it all turns out. It's just pure problematic. So I just felt like that kind of embodies Hamilton.
I like it. He's not willing to wait for it. He wants to go out there and get what he wants,
Right.
which is, I need a new holiday. I need something different to celebrate. Yeah, yes, Halloween's great, but I need something more. So he goes out and finds Christmas and like, I'm going to go ahead and make Christmas ours.
Right.
And
exactly.
so I kind of get that. And I could see Hamilton doing something similar on the, he's not going to wait around. He's going to make something happen. And yeah, I could see that, like Jack Skellington.
Thank you.
Now, yeah, I think you're going to be, I think it's already, I've given it away as I've talked about. Well, first of all, I want to say I did think about somebody else to play Hamilton first because I don't know, there's just something about him. Something about him just shouts Hamilton, and that was Jack the Lamplighter. I don't know. There's something specific about Jack the Lamplighter from Mary Poppins Returns.
Really?
There's something about him that just reminds me very much of Hamilton. I don't know what it is.
How did you come up with that?
About that. But when I went back to this thing, trying to figure out, they're friends that kind of split off. They do different things. One's a little bit more impulsive. One's a little bit more contained. Well, if I'm going to go with the impulsive one, originally I was going to go with Mickey as the hero. If you look here at the front of our logo for this, you can see it's Mickey Mouse as Hamilton on there, right? Well, Mickey Mouse is not Hamilton to me. Hamilton is actually Donald Duck. Talk about somebody. I think actually, can you read off what you said, what Lynn said about Hamilton again?
Sure. An earnest, ambitious hothead, a man possessed, speaks his mind no matter the cost.
That's Donald Duck.
It is.
I didn't read that, but that's Donald Duck to me. Impetuous, willing to get out there, very impulsive, a little bit of a hothead. We know Donald is a hothead for sure. That makes sense to me for Hamilton.
Yeah.
And again, to me, they have to be friends. Mickey and Donald are friends, but at the same point, there are sometimes adversaries for different things, and I could see that happening. And I could definitely see them playing these two roles. So yeah, as much as I at first was thinking Mickey makes total, and matter of fact, I almost stayed completely away from it because I'm like, that's just too darn obvious.
Yeah.
The more I was thinking about them flipping and playing the different roles, I thought, no, that makes sense.
So
I have to bring them up as those two being our lead characters, are Hamilton and our Burr.
Well, it is, I guess, very good to have, for traditional sake, with Disney characters, those two playing the lead roles. And I think the way you've explained it, I'm on board with that. It hurts to think of Mickey Mouse as Aaron Burr because he is the villain in this story.
But he is, yes, because when it's all said and done, he's the one that ends up, killing Alexander Hamilton, right? So that's tough to think of Mickey Mouse doing something like that. He's just shot Donald Duck. But could you see them having a duel? Could you see Mickey and Donald having a duel? Maybe with something that doesn't end up being, lethal,
Right.
sure. But as far as actually their personalities, and again, Burr, I relate to Burr for so many reasons throughout this, except for the fact that he just goes too far. But I get the waiting for it. I probably do that more than I should. I should be more Hamilton at times, and I'm more Burr at times. I get it. But as I mentioned, both do sort of sketchy things. Both are heroes and villains. I mean, Aaron Burr was a hero also of the Revolutionary War.
Right. Right.
Just as Alexander Hamilton was. They were both heroes. They both do good things. They both do smart things. Just the way it plays out is that because of the one shot,
right,
that is what ends up happening. That Burr ends up being the complete villain,
right,
and Hamilton the hero. Whereas something different could have happened there, and you could tell totally.
Sure.
It could have been told a different way.
Right.
The thing about Hamilton is that's what makes it fascinating, especially the interplay between those two characters. And I'm sure we're going to go over a lot of this coming up here when we get to our Hamilton extravaganza later this month. But the fact that both those characters have both sides of their personality, they are complete people, they're complete characters, and it plays out throughout both of their stories.
Right.
And that, if you were just to change a couple scenes, that show could be Burr and not Hamilton,
right?
Because Burr is so important to that. That's what makes it interesting. And I think that's kind of why these characters fit into those roles.
Yeah,
as well.
No, definitely. Like I said, I think it's cool that you put, the kind of like the top two classic characters in the lead.
I went way more classic than I thought I was going to.
Yeah.
I hit only a few more modern characters out there. I think about the characters, the movies I went Robin Hood.
Right.
I went with Peter Pan. All the many of the Sensational Six plus Clarabelle.
Right.
There was very few outside of Eugene Fitzherbert and Mufasa that I really named that were more modern characters.
Right.
Which was completely surprised me. That's not how I thought I was going to.
Yeah. No, it's good. I'm glad one of us did that, and I like it.
Yeah. Did you have anything else that you wanted to put into play? Any other characters?
I just had a couple other side characters. I had Mulligan,
Hercules Mulligan.
And it's funny that because I didn't associate the names, but I thought Phil from Hercules because Phil's trying to help, Hercules get into shape, and he's loyal to him. He's wanting to support a cause, not himself, so I saw that. And for John Lawrence, looking at him as kind of a quiet leader, Harrison Dula, I thought kind of matched that personality.
Very cool. Yeah, I like it. It. I'm just on the fly here, just kind of thinking about those characters. I didn't really put any serious thought into it because I didn't know if we would go there or not. I think for Hercules Mulligan, maybe Mr. Incredible, from my point of view, could fit into that role. He can be a little bit stealthy, even though he's a big, big man, as we see Hercules Mulligan often as a big, big man on the stage, but also is out there and ready to fight and do the right thing. I could see him kind of playing that role there. John Lawrence, that's a really interesting one. Maybe I can go with Mulan as John Lawrence, because I think John Lawrence is actually willing to whip up the crowds, whip up the people to part of the revolution.
Right.
I feel like Mulan would do that as she tries to get everybody involved in the battle during it. But also he's a leader. He's leading, battalions out there. I could definitely see Mulan playing John Lawrence as well.
Yeah. Cool. Anyways, I think that's a pretty good rundown of the main characters in Hamilton.
And we'd love to know your list. Who would you put in these character roles? I think this could be interesting. I think this could be broken down by Disney characters. I think you can mix it up like Michelle did. I think you could do Muppets. I really want to see Muppets Hamilton.
Yeah.
Please, Disney, do Muppets Hamilton. It would be amazing. You could totally do a Hamilton cast with the Muppets. That'd be so fun. I think you can do Marvel characters. You can do live action Disney. There are so many ways to approach this. I just ended up going straight animation outside of when I mentioned Jack the Lamplighter, but just
Right.
because there's something about him. I
He
don't know what it
looks
is.
like him.
Is it? Does he look like
Yeah,
it?
he looks a lot
Mm.
like the guy who plays Hamilton on
Guess so.
Broadway,
I guess so.
or who
Maybe
was
so.
the original Hamilton.
Maybe
on
so.
Broadway.
Something about him anyway. But outside of that, I went completely animated, but I could totally see, like Michelle did, mixing it up or focusing on one brand, just going Pixar. You could do just Pixar,
Right.
classic Disney, Renaissance Disney, anything. It'd be
Yeah.
great.
I know. Like I did all films, but there are a lot of other,
Yeah.
you know,
Disney
like
Channel.
right?
Yeah.
Disney Channel, shorts, and things like that. Yeah.
So many ways to love to hear your list. Please hit us up, the Gmail account, Hyperion Adventures Podcast at gmail.com with your list. Hit us up on social media. We'd love to know who you think. And it could be a single role, or it could be all these roles we talked about, or something that we even left off, because there are many more roles that get played within this. Some of them are dual roles. You know, Hercules Morgan, also James Madison. So yeah, definitely love to know who you have in these spots. And that is our Hamilton Recast with Disney characters.